Hello and welcome to Daily Records. I'm Tommy Burton, and today's album is an often forgotten about album from the great Johnny Cash. This is Bitter Tears, Ballads of the American Indian. Now, Bitter Tears was released in October of 1964. And funny enough, in thinking about this, it really blows my mind. In 1964, this was his 20th album. Now, Johnny Cash probably debuted in Sun, around 55, 56. And by 1964, he was releasing his 20th album. Just think about that for a couple of seconds. But back to the album itself. This is a concept album, and it's one of his sort of Americana records. It's associated with his sort of like his Train records or his Ballads of the Old West, those types of things. Now, this is focused on the American Indian, just like the title says. And probably the biggest hit on this album, or one that you probably know, is the Ballad of Ira Hayes. Now, this album has sort of undergone a little bit of re-evaluation in more recent years. It was an album that I believe there was a tribute released a few years ago that had Gillian Welch and Emmylou Harris, Bill Miller, and I think they sort of revisited this album. And it focuses in particular on Native American Indians or Native American people from North America, and particularly the Seneca and Pima tribes, those people. Mine is a Columbia mono pressing. And I picked it up a few years ago. I can't remember exactly where I got this album. Now, the story is that Johnny Cash sort of thought that he maybe had some Cherokee ancestry in his background, and so Johnny Cash, before he was sort of into prisoners' rights and things like that, he had taken up a lot of Native American activism in the 60s. And, of course, you know, there was a lot of various social upheaval at the time, but it was very brave of somebody like Johnny Cash at this point in his career to undertake such a serious issue. And he later even learned that he, in fact, was not part Cherokee, that his ancestry went back to the British people. But that still didn't stop his activism. Now, Peter LaFarge wrote, I think, half the tracks on this album. And also the track, The Vanishing Race, was written by Johnny Cash and Johnny Horton. And so the album is definitely a concept album. All the songs thematically carry over, particularly the Peter LaFarge tracks. They talk about the Seneca Nation losing their land in Pennsylvania and New York. They talk about federal construction, the Ballad of Ira Hayes. And so it definitely, of course, Ira Hayes was part of the flag raising ceremony on Iwo Jima in World War II. And so this song pays tribute to them. There's also a song on here called Custer. It kind of was one of the early songs to sort of take aim at General Custer's sort of legacy, and most people know about that because he was defeated, because he was arrogant, and so there's a history lesson here, and a lot of people are familiar with that story, and so it talks about the Battle of Little Bighorn. But it just is one of those albums. It's very it's very dark in its theme. Ballad of Ira Hayes was a big single, and of course the album itself was well released or well received when it came out. But not a lot of people were brave enough to really talk about these issues. So for Johnny Cash to tackle these issues, it was a huge undertaking, and it really said a lot about Johnny Cash and sort of how it forever linked Johnny Cash to social activism, and particularly standing up for the downtrodden and the little man, which Johnny Cash is sort of known for now. But Bitter Tears, Ballads of the American Indian, a social record from the early 60s from Johnny Cash. Like I said, kind of overlooked now in the shadow of a lot of the big hits and things like that. But really an interesting subject matter and some things to be learned from it. But that is today's Daily Record. Like, comment, subscribe, share below. Tell me what you think about Bitter Tears. Give me thoughts on it. Also, if you'll follow me on Instagram and Twitter, it's TommyBurton75. And I love interacting with you guys. And so thank you so much for watching. Check out my other channel, Tommy Burton's VC channel, where I post not as frequently, but go into a little more depth on some things. And in the meantime, I'll see you guys again tomorrow with another Daily Record.